Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's discussion on the film Vertigo. We will have a lecture from Mr. MK Raghavendra first on the complexities of Vertigo. He is a film and literary scholar, theorist, critic, and writer. He co founded Deep Focus, the film journal. He has authored 10 volumes on cinema and literature. He has contributed to numerous newspapers and periodicals in India and abroad. He received the Swarna Kamal, the National Award for Best Film Critic in 1997. He is a member of FIPRESCI, the International Federation of Film Critics. He has been on the jury of several film festivals in India and abroad. He has also been a speaker at conferences and a visiting faculty at leading institutions. He is also the founder and editor of Phalanx, an online journal dedicated to debate. Sir, can you go ahead with the complexities of Vertigo?
Now, this talk is about vertigo generally. It's the complexities of vertigo, right? Now, before we understand what exactly vertigo is, what the film is about, how does one understand the film? First of all, what are the ways in which a film can be understood? It's a question which we should ask, right? Now, okay, one of the things is the first way of understanding the very lowest level of understanding a movie. The first level of understanding the movie is to understand the story, right? You understand the story, the characters, and their motivation. Then you understand the milieu. Okay, so in some kind of films, like for example, political films, wherever the milieu is very important. For example, if you're having a movie set, having a movie set in the Soviet Union, or you're having a movie set in Nazi Germany, the milieu plays a very important part. The milieu can become very important under certain circumstances. Certain other circumstances, its motivation and character driven, that becomes in another kind of movie. Okay. Now, this is the first kind of meaning, is simply understanding the story. Now, it's not as simple as you think. Understanding, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with this, the American director David Lynch. If you look at Lynch, for instance, it's very difficult to understand even the story of a Lynch film, right? So the point is, the story is not that simple. The what is called the referential meaning. The first, it's not that simple to think that all films will immediately yield that immediate thing of what the story is all about, right? The second meaning corresponds to the moral, which is the conceptual meaning, right? What is the conceptual meaning? In terms of, there has to be some concept underlying the film. What exactly is the thing? It's the closest relative of that would be the moral in a story, right? In Indian cinema, the conceptual meaning is very important. Um, Indian cinema is very different. In Indian cinema, never comes. I mean, the story is immediately understood. There's no problem about the story, right? Very rarely are Indian movies difficult to understand at the first level. At the second level, in fact, it comes through also. It's pretty obvious. For example, if you take something like Three Idiots, what is the meaning of Three Idiots? Has to do with self-fulfillment, finding one's own, one's own place, one's own, fulfill one's destiny, kind of thing, right? Then there is the third meaning. The second meaning is the conceptual meaning. The third meaning is the contradictions in the narrative. It's what is called a symbolic or covert meaning. It's hidden in some sense. It's not that easy, right? It's not that easy to figure out. You have to look at contradictions in the film. And in fact, I would say that Vertigo is a great film because it deals a lot in this third thing, which is a hidden covert meaning, right? The fourth thing is what is called the unintended meaning. It's symptomatic meaning. It's a symptom. For example, if the filmmaker has certain prejudices, okay, has a repressed side of some sort, right? Those repressions is also shown in the movie. This is basically the ground for the academic. The academic looks into this kind of thing for film appreciation, where your appreciation of a movie is associated with the intent of the filmmaker is very important in appreciating a film. Whereas the other is what's the shall we say the unintended meaning, the symptomatic meaning is that okay, a great film. When you say a film is a great film, right? What exactly do you mean? What do you appreciate in a movie? Okay, now we go to the second point, which is a movie is actually some kind of replication of the world. You're supposed to generally look at the world. Even fantasy is a replication of the world. Can anybody tell me what fantasy is? How is it a replication of the world? Yes, I won't stop here. I mean, It is a replication because it deals with possibilities, right? So in that sense, it's not the world as it is, but that it could be, right? Science fiction would be the world as it could be. Okay, that could be. So what happens is a great film is something because the world itself is unknowable, the world itself is complex. Any replication of the world, any kind of way in which the world can be laid out to the spectator, will have to incorporate this complexity. If the world is unknowable, if the world is unknowable, this complexity has to show itself as ambiguity in some point. Okay, the film will have to be ambiguous in some way. It should mean more than one thing. It should mean, okay, that you understand the word meaning of the word ambiguity, right? So fundamentally, you could say that the two criteria which I would say are central to understanding movies. One is complexity, the other is ambiguity. Okay, these are things which are very much sought in films around the world. India seems to be an exception. I won't go into this today. Indian films are fairly complex. They seem to deliver, sort of yield everything at first glance. Okay, so I won't talk about that now. But this is the fundamental thing. Okay, now when we come to Vertigo, it has been called the greatest movie ever made. It is complex, but so the question here is, what does the film mean? What does it yield on deeper scrutiny? Does it yield anything more than what it has? What would you all of you think? Would the film be simply a thriller? Would it simply be a suspense film, or would it contain anything more? Would any of you dispute the fact that it's complex? It leaves you with all kinds of puzzles. It leaves you with questions which you can go on answering. Does any of you feel that way about the film? What do you feel? I would like to invite an answer to this question. You write it down or whatever, or speak out or whatever. What do you think generally? Okay, I'm not getting any response. Okay, so I don't want to waste time on this. You can talk to me or answer this question later. Okay. Now, this film is a film about sexual obsession, right? Scotty, let me briefly point to the film. Scotty is a policeman, and the very first event in the film, he has developed a fear of heights because of a colleague's death when he falls down. They're chasing a thief or a criminal across the rooftops of San Francisco. San Francisco is a very important character in the film, kind of thing. Okay. Now he is approached by a old classmate of his from college, a man called Gavin Elster, who asks him to follow his wife Madeline, who's been behaving in a very peculiar way, right? She seems to be in some kind of some kind of trance. Where she does things she cannot remember after that. Why she's doing these things? What these trances about? What has she been doing? Okay. And the point is that she's been traveling in a car alone. They don't know where she's been traveling. But when you look at the Milo speedometer of the car, it looks like she's traveled hundreds of miles, 200 miles or so. And which is no account of what she's been doing traveling for 200 miles. Okay. Now Scotty follows her. He finds her visiting a museum. The various things that Scotty finds. She visits a museum. She buys I think, a flowers, a bouquet of flowers. She goes sits in the museum looking at a picture of some picture called Portrait of Carlotta. Okay. Now then she goes visits a grave of someone called Carlotta Valdez is the name. She visits that grave. And then she's dressed somewhat in a similar way as Carlotta. She's got a bouquet of flowers. Carlotta in that painting has also got a bouquet of flowers. And then she goes and sits in a room in a hotel, doing nothing except sitting in that room. And it's an old hotel called the McKittrick's Hotel. She's sitting there. She just, nothing is known about what she's doing there. Scotty makes enquiries. He finds that she's got in this habit of visiting this hotel frequently. She comes and occupies that room and she goes back. She comes from a very rich family. Her husband is very rich a shipping magnate. So she's very rich in that way. So she can afford all this. Okay. Now Scotty goes back to her husband and tells him that this is the thing. There's somebody called Carlotta. Now the husband gave an Elster reveals various things about Madeline. Among this is that Carlotta was her grandmother, was a great grandmother or grandmother. I'm not sure. I think it's her grandmother. I think she was a grandmother. She came from somewhere in the south from Mexico. some Spanish ancestry. She came from Mexico. She was there. She became the mistress of a married man, a very rich man of San Francisco, and she had a child by him. But that child was taken away. She went mad, right? Carlotta went mad because of this, and she committed suicide after the thing. The point is, so Scotty says, "Yeah, I can understand that being, having an ancestor like that, so she can be obsessed by that." So this Kevin Elster says she doesn't know about any of this because her mother told me this in private because she was afraid that knowing about the grandmother's tragic history would make her mad, would send her off, would affect her adversely. Was what was Kevin Elster's thing, right? Now the point is, okay, Gavin Elster says, now you follow her, you look after her. I'm employing you to guard her, make sure she doesn't do anything. Okay, so then the point is that now Madeline is reaching a certain because she doesn't never knew anything about Carlota Valdez. She's reaching a certain age when Carlotta committed suicide. So there's the possibility, what is hinted at in the film is that Madeline is possessed by the spirit of the dead Carlotta, is what is suggested in the film, right? That's what is suggested. So the possibility that has to be protected against by Scotty is the possibility of Madeline taking her own life because of being possessed by her grandmother, right? So the question is, so Scotty starts following her. Okay. He follows her, maintains the distance. She travels to various places and all that. Maintains his distance from her. But at some point in the Golden Gate Bridge, under the Golden Gate Bridge, she's there. She throws that bouquet. She's in her hand. She throws it into the water and she jumps into the water, right? Then Scotty, in order to save her, is forced to jump in and save her, right? Now she's completely unconscious. So Scotty takes her back to his own house, own apartment, and then after that, what happens is that gradually Scotty and she come together. There's a relationship which builds up. There's some kind of love thing which builds up, and gradually Scotty finds himself, shall we say, obsessed with the thing of Madeline, right? Okay. Now there is this parallel thing there. This thing of story of Midge. Okay, so she is confidant to Scotty, and Scotty tells her various things, and Mitch realizes that he's obsessed. Mitch is actually engaged to Scotty once upon a time, and she seems to sort of, some jealousy she has for Madeline, and she tries to make herself look like Madeline, and it upsets the Scotty no end. The point is, Midge is completely without mystery. There's nothing about Midge. She's completely banal. She's completely a person without mystery. Whereas Madeline is completely, she has a mystique, there's a mystery around her, right? So the question is that makes him very angry, the fact that Midge is dressed up like Madeline, right? So then there's another scene, I think one of the great scenes in the film, when Scotty and she drive together to the Sequoia National Park, where the sequoia trees, the redwood trees are there. The oldest one is fallen down a long time ago. They've got a cross section of that tree in the park, where the various rings in the cross section tells you this year 1066. In fact, they were probably the earliest one mentioned there is 1066 Battle of Hastings when William the Conqueror landed in England and conquered the Saxons and set up thing in England, right? So the point is, Madeline, okay, Madeline starts talking to him, and generally the sense of Carlotta Valdez, and Madeline points to one of the rings, and then another ring, and says, "I was born here, I died here." Okay, all right. That the rings in the Sequoia National Park, when she says, "I was born here, I died here, you took no notice of me," generally locates her. Then he finds out gradually that the whole history of San Francisco with the Spaniards coming, Spanish Mexican thing, and the American thing and taking over and all this, the whole history of San Francisco comes there. So the point, the important thing here is that Madeline is somehow intertwined with the history of San Francisco which is itself part of world history in some way. This Sequoia National Park sort of locates her in that kind of history. Okay, that small interval, very small interval in which when I say I was born here, I died here, and you took no notice of me. That is small interval is the interval in which Carlotta Valdez lived from the time of her birth and to the time of her death. This is the interval of Carlotta Valdez's life, right? So then what happens is, okay, then after this, what happens is, okay, then gradually, I don't know what this problem is. Okay, this I mean, you're hearing me now. So this 1,000 years of history or something of that tree, it's lived. So this what's her name, Madeline, and as Carlotta is located within this thing of history, thousand years of history, right? And they introduce a certain, shall we say, there is a certain thing of supernatural introduced here. She disappears. What's her name? Madeline disappears, and she's actually behind a tree, completely lost in a trance. All this, okay. Now she keeps talking about a dream she's had. I've seen this movie a long time ago. I'm trying to recollect it. She talks about a dream she keeps having, a recurring dream, which talks about a Spanish settlement somewhere. There's a church people there. There's a place. There's a horse, which is actually a horse, a stables and all this. As she describes it more and more and more, gradually Scotty comes to realize this place is actually a real Spanish settlement, which is just a little outside San Francisco, probably 100 kilometers or so outside San Francisco. And he says, let's go there. You can have a look. Maybe it will bring back memories. Maybe it will exorcise all this Spanish past from you. Okay. So he takes her there. He takes her there, and then she starts, sitting there. She seems to be in a trance. She seems not talking normally, and she says, "It's too late. It's too late. It's too late." Right? He says that, right? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Why it's too late? Too late. Why is it too late? And then she suddenly makes up her mind, and she starts running up the church steeple. Now he cannot follow her up the church steeple because he is, what is the thing? He is got this vertigo. He can't stand heights. She climbs up, hears a scream, and then she sees her falling from the thing. And obviously, she's fallen down, and she looks out of the window, and she's fallen down, and she's dead, right? There's an inquest, and Madeline is dead, and the point is, Scotty is blamed for not protecting her when her husband paid. Her husband says, "I don't blame you, but it was because of your fear of heights that this happened." So the point is, he's blamed for the death of Madeline, not made culpable legally, but the point is, he is supposed to protect her. He did not protect her. No, it's up to here. Okay, up to here, this is the thing. No, Scotty is in some kind of deep pain. He is in a kind of depression. He's lost in a thing, in his own thoughts. He was obsessed with Madeline. Madeline is dead. He can't do anything about it. Okay. After all this thing, Gavin says, "I've had enough of this. I'm going to go away somewhere far away. It's too much. I can't take anymore." And goes away. He doesn't see Gavin again. Gavin helps her again. Okay. Now, after a few days, after going around, after not fully recovered, wandering the streets, Scotty comes across a woman who looks very much like Madeline. Who he talks to, she says she's Judy Barton. Now she's not exactly like Madeline. She talks with the Kansas accent. She's got a very fairly coarse accent. Madeline spoke in a certain way. She had sophistication. This one doesn't have sophistication. She seems to be fairly coarse. Okay, so Scotty gradually, gradually what he does is he befriends her in some way. Okay, but at that point, I think it's at this point, Hitchcock reveals something to us, which is actually that Judy was Madeline, right? Judy was, and this was part of a conspiracy to kill the real Madeline, which hatched with her husband, right? So the question is, now Judy, actually, because Judy has known what's his name, Scotty as Scotty, she's had the relationship with her. It is not Madeline who's had the relationship, it is Judy as Madeline who's had the relationship. Judy is actually in love with Scotty. She cannot reveal it to him, so she writes a letter but tears it up, right? So the point is, Now, people object to this. Let's go into this. People don't like this. The point is, why is it revealed? It sits out like a sore thumb with with a complaint that many people made about the movie. Why do you reveal this ending here? Okay, we'll go into that later. Okay. Now he tries to dress up Madeline in every possible, dress up Judy in every possible way to make her look like Madeline, right? He gets her to wear the same clothes, he makes her wear the same dress, he makes her comb her hair in the same way, buys her a bouquet, he does all this, he makes her, and gradually he keeps doing this, okay? He keeps doing that. Now the point is, okay, keeps doing this, gradually turning Judy into Madeline is what he's doing, right? But then what happens is, at one point, when they're about to go somewhere, she's dressed fully, she comes out and she wears a necklace which he recognizes from Madeline. It is a necklace that she had of Carlotta. Judy's been given this necklace as some kind of keepsake by Gavin Elster, and she's wearing it. She's made that mistake. When he sees that, he knows he's been had. Scotty knows he's been had, and that this entire thing was a charade which has been done by Judy, and there was no Madeline, and Judy was the person. He understands that. Okay? He doesn't tell her. He puts her through the same process that Madeline went through. Judy goes up, the same church people, everything goes up. Now, what exactly are his motives? We'll go into that later, okay? And then what happens? You know the story. That finally she climbs up to the same thing. Something happens. A nun is there. She hears voices and she comes there. And then Judy thinks it's a ghost of Madeline who has come, and then Judy also falls to her death. The film ends there, but Scotty is cured of his he's cured of his ailment or whatever it was. Okay, now this is the important thing, right? Now, okay, up to now I just told the story. I've just gone through the story in case people haven't seen it. It's possible that some one or two of you haven't seen it. Seriously? Okay. Now the question is, what questions are you going to ask regarding this film? What exactly? Why have I emphasized the fact that it's complex? Why do I understand? I think emphasize this point at all. Okay. First of all, right? Everything in the film can be explained in rational terms. Okay. Though what it does is it keeps making us go off into occult explanations, supernatural explanations, ghostly, haunting, reincarnation. These are the things that force us into. But every single thing seems to have a rational explanation. Every conduct of us, behavior of us is rational explanation. Okay, let us take this example. Okay, when Madeline, Judy as Madeline, is sitting on that in that stable, the horse, the fake horse is there, the cart, the coach is there. She says, "It's too late. It's too late." What do you make of that? Can anybody answer this question? Does anybody have any answer at all? You can write it there. Does anybody know? Have any of you? If you don't know, can you say I don't know? I didn't. I didn't think of that. Can you explain that? I don't know. Okay, all right. Okay. The point is, you see this movie again. Okay. When she says it's too late, in the distance we see a car going past. Okay. That car is Gavin Elster's car with the real Madeline in it. So what she means is not something supernatural. It means she cannot withdraw now. Okay, that thing has already been done. The die has been cast. She cannot. You see this movie, it's so clever. Okay, the point is the situation has already been done. She cannot withdraw from the situation at all. Okay, this is what it's too late. It's too late means. It doesn't mean some metaphysical, mystical thing at all. Okay, it means that Gavin has said, but he doesn't understand what it means. He doesn't pay attention to the car. You see the film, the car is there. Okay, so that's it's very important that every single thing event in the film has some rational explanation. There's almost nothing in the film. There is nothing actually which is supernatural, which has no natural explanation. Now, I don't know. You wouldn't know about this. There is this Bulgarian theorist by the name of Todorov. Okay, Todorov came up with three kinds of fantasy. Okay, one he called fantastic, which is a supernatural explanation, like a ghost story, right? When the supernatural element comes in, it's fantasy, right? If that supernatural turns out to be not really supernatural, but there's a rational explanation for it, okay, like hallucination, okay, or in Vertigo itself, the fact that everything is stage managed in a certain way to make it look like supernatural, right? That he called uncanny. There's a third category which he called marvelous, which is Lord of the Rings. You create an alternate world in some way. Okay, Alice in Wonderland would be marvelous. Your Wizard of Oz would be marvelous. It's a completely alternate world which has been created. So these are the fundamental things. So by that definition, you could say that Vertigo is uncanny, not fantastic, right? Okay, Hitchcock has not made fantastic movies. There are no ghost stories in Hitchcock movies. They're all set in the real world. They're all set in real world. They're all rational. In fact, the basic thing is rationality is key thing in Hitchcock stuff. He doesn't make ghost stories. He doesn't make fantastic films, right? This is the thing. So Vertigo is uncanny in that sense, right? It's uncanny. The other films of which are also uncanny. All right. Now you have to ask certain questions about this movie. Question one: who does Scotty love? He has never seen Madeline. He does not. He's obviously not in love with Judy. Okay. Who does he love? Right. It is Judy in the role of Madeline. Madeline doesn't exist. The woman he loves doesn't exist at all. Right. Doesn't exist at all. She's simply a phantom, some kind of phantom, which is something which has been created in his imagination based on all the based on this on the stimuli that he's been provided with. So he's in love with a fictitious woman who's never existed, and this is very interesting, right? Okay, that Midge dressing up is that Midge lacks that mystique. Madeline has a certain mystique of a fictional creation, right? Let's go into the next thing about how that fictional creation has been put together. Now, the important thing in this movie, why they reveal the solution three-fourths of the way through, why they revealed it is that constructed story of Madeline. He's completely infatuated with that Madeline, right? He's completely infatuated with her. The point is that constructed nature thing of Madeline slips away. It has to slip away. So finally, he has to be left with the flesh and blood Judy with none of the mystique of Madeline. And what makes Madeline, I mean, gives her the mystique. Okay, what gives her the mystique, Madeline the mystique, is the fact that there's a narrative constructed around her, right? There's a big narrative around her. And the thing is, okay, Midge doesn't have a narrative. I mean, in fact, the narrative has become so sacred in his mind. The narrative around Midge dresses up as that it's completely hopeless. He can't, right? Judy herself has no mystique. Madeline by herself may also not have any mystique. Okay, it is Madeline with that narrative constructed around her which has the mystique, right? And that narrative is not simply a narrative about her past. It includes world history. Okay. It includes 1066, it includes the Battle of Hastings, it includes all that through that Sequoia National Park. When she says, I was born here, I died here, you took no notice of me. Okay. He's brought the whole of history into it. That Madeline, as he has imagined, as she's been constructed in his mind by Gavin Elster by the conspiracy, has taken him so much because that whole thing is, it's a complete fiction, but it's become so real because it's been embedded in history in that way, right? You get my point, okay? So the thing is, there's embedding of that of Carlotta Valdez's story. Madeline as Carlotta Valdez is done so in the thing of history that finally, what does he love? He doesn't love either Madeline and as flesh and blood, as a person with a certain appearance, with certain looks, but this Madeline with all this story, this past, this thing about her own being the mistress of some man, having a child, all this story plus this past of San Francisco, that entire McKittrick Hotel, which was once the house of that man who was the original Carlotta Valdez's lover. Okay, all that stuff has been brought into her. So he's fallen in love with that mystique which is created with all these real things. So that there are real things. There are obviously Carlotta Valdez is real. But the Madeline he loves, that association made between Carlotta Valdez and Madeline is a completely fabricated one, right? So it's that which gives her the mystique. Judy has none of that. Okay, so it is necessary for that construction, that huge construction of Madeline as Carlota Valdez, just to slip away. Okay, so then that's also the finally once he realizes that this whole thing is fictional, that what has been created doesn't exist really, he loses interest in her altogether. Okay, he won't even kiss her. He won't do anything. I mean, this question he's just completely uninterested in her. And Judy loves him. Okay, Judy loves Scotty for being Scotty. Scotty doesn't love Judy at all. He loves that fandom creation of Madeline, who never existed at all. Okay, that's what makes it, it's very impressive, interesting here. Okay, so the question is, okay, now we come to this. Okay, then the point is, the entire thing of linking her up to San Francisco's past history, that mystique around her. Okay, now without that linkage of Judy to that figure of Madeline, to that figure of the past, to the figure of world history, to the figure of 1066, to the 1066, to the Magna Carta, with all that paraphernalia which is accumulated around things, he's not interested in her at all. Okay, he has seen her as that. He has seen her in a. This is what makes that film, completely a different thing. Okay, now. Um, and finally, when what's her name? Madeline, when she dies, who Judy, look, Judy has to die in the film, right? Because she's collaborated in the murder of the original Madeline. Judy has to die, and the Judy is killed by what she imagines to be a ghost, which is the nun, right? Now, at this point, I'll tell you a story. It's an interesting story. A very thing about this entire thing. I'll tell you a story. I don't know what connection you make of this. It's a story, four-page story. I would suggest you go home and read it. It's called this entire thing of history as a construct, right? I mean, what we take to be history is basically a construct. It's not simply the past, right? It's the past deconstructed based on certain evidence. Sometimes the evidence is not there. Sometimes it's constructed. So we have got a great amount of faith, and like we are taking, today especially, we're taking a lot of historical facts are undisputed, right? But basically, what we are getting passionate about is the fact that it's all constructed. Nothing is really. I'll tell you this interesting story. It's by a writer called Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, Borges. That the name of the film, the name of the story is The Theme of the Traitor and the Hero. Okay, it's only four pages long. I'll tell you this story. It's called The Theme of the Traitor and the Hero. I'll tell you this story. No, it is set in Ireland or some such place. It's a story written as if it's a story being written. Okay. I have thought of a story many times. This happens in a place where there is unrest, where there is a revolution. Okay. Okay. It's a I mean, so in this man is so it's written like that. A story in the process of being written. This the protagonist is the grandson. Yeah, okay, please. Yeah, you can do that. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Just four pages, read it, okay. It's been made into a bad film by Bernardo. So then the what happens is this young man is going to Ireland to talk to his grandfather was an Irish revolutionary. uh, he was murdered on the eve of some successful uprising in Ireland, right? So the point is he's going there to inquire into his grandfather's death, to write a biography of his grandfather, who was a Fergus Kilpatrick. Grandfather's name was. He was an Irish revolutionary. He was killed in a theater, okay, which somehow seemed to resemble Lincoln's assassination in the theater by John Wilkes Booth, right? The important thing is this man makes enquiries about the grandfather's assassination, and he finds certain things that before his assassination, certain words were said to him, which feature in Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare, right? He found certain things. He finds certain things also from Macbeth, some witches and all that. So this guy finds very, very strange that these things are, that something life imitating, repeating history, repeating itself is strange enough. history repeating art is even stranger. Okay, he makes enquiries. He finds that this among his friends of his grandfather was one poet. He's a poet. Okay, I mean a poet in the Gaelic language, right? And that poet was also there. And about some time, a month or so before the grandfather's assassination, they discovered that there was a traitor in their midst who was leaking secrets to the British, right? They hated the enemy, the British were enemies, right? He What he does is he makes enquiries, he finds this thing, and the point is that at that meeting chaired by his grandfather, that unknown what's it called spy in their midst was sentenced to death. Nothing is more is said of that. Okay, nothing more is said about the execution of that spy or whatever. Nothing more is said about him. This is actually seems a little unlike the grandfather because he was a somewhat kind-hearted, merciful man. Sentenced this man to death, whatever. He might have given him some other thing, made him, shall we say, some kind of retribution or whatever. I mean, he would have remorse or whatever could have been allowed. Point is that, right? He goes inquiring into it, and finally everything comes and falls into place. Okay, he finds, okay, how does it? He says, so the story is the story being written. So he says, I have not yet finished the story. Okay, I have not. He thinks, that everything falls into place in this story. Okay, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. Okay, how it falls because he's writing the story. He's not figured it out. Okay, then finally everything becomes clear to him. Okay, it becomes clear to him. The traitor in the middle of this group, the man who betrayed the secrets to the British, was the grandfather himself. He was the traitor in that midst. It came to light. Okay. The grandfather, they wanted to sentence him to death. The grandfather said, give me a chance. Okay. I don't want to be known as a traitor. I don't want to, grandfather said, I don't want to be known as a traitor all my life. Give me a chance to redeem myself. Okay. You build up a story, build up a theatrical this thing around me, around my thing, assassinate me. You assassinate me and celebrate the thing as a thing because of the I mean this assassination is has to be done very fast. This will be great Irish festival. If I'm assassinated in the festival I'm assassinated, my name will live longer. It will be so. What happens is that they have to build a whole scenario for the assassination of the grandfather. Everything has to be done, made dramatic, so that the grandfather's assassination looks it's an assassination like it's an execution made to look like an assassination, right? So the point is, his Gaelic friend who writes poetry has translated into the friend has translated Shakespeare into Gaelic. He's given the chance of constructing the story about the grandfather's assassination, right? So he doesn't have time. He doesn't have time to write a story of his own. What he does is he plagiarizes from Shakespeare. He takes a little bit of Macbeth. He takes a little bit from Macbeth. He takes from Julius Caesar, and he constructs a scenario. Okay. Then what happens is everything happens. Or every single act is devised carefully. The grandfather is also rehearses the lines he's supposed to utter on the as he is shot dead or something. Everything everything happens as it should happen. The grandfather repeats the words he's rehearsed earlier, and the grandfather dies. Okay. Then the protagonist wants to write a biography revealing the truth about his grandfather. He decides not to. And the last line in the story is perhaps that too was foreseen, which means that entire theater, this theatrical thing which was built so much, okay, which is expanded so much that it includes this man's life also. So finally, what happens is that finally the newly constructed history usurps the whole of the world. Okay, the whole of the world, the future, the past, everything is taken over by this grandfather, right? So that is what the story is about. I thought this thing had a lot to do with Vertigo in some sense. That Vertigo is again this entire constructed history. So finally, if you say that Madeline was constructed, okay, Madeline was constructed, then Madeline was constructed in order to, through Judy and through stories, through his, on the construction of the Battle of Hastings itself. Doesn't it throw some doubt about the construction of history? But this is the basically the thing. So I got that sense of this film. Okay, that on one side there is also this thing of psychological motivation. What is making what's his name, Scotty, do all this kind of thing? What is his motivation? Finally, it looks like he doesn't care about Judy at all. He's only happy about the fact that he's lost at Vertigo. Okay, that's all he's happy about. He doesn't care very much whether Judy lives or dies or whatever. It's very he's become extremely cold-blooded, Scotty. So my understanding of the film was like that. I'm saying that the film raises all these issues. It makes it puts itself in something. So you ask any number of questions. You can. I mean, it does what I said about the film. That hardly exhausts the film, right? There's much more in the film, but you will have to dig it up. You will have to make. The point is that the complexity of the film, the kind of issues it raises, that become very important in the context of what I've said. It becomes very important in the kind of questions, the kind of stories, the kind of elements which are brought into it. Okay, make it ask all kinds of things about reality, about this, about that. What is it that one responds? What does one fall in love with? Does one fall in love? Like for example, falling in love with someone who has a story about her, right? She's lived a, let's say, assume a tormented past in some way. That story is entirely a construct. It may not be a real story at all, right? It's a construct. All that goes into this thing of creating that mystique about this person. But that mystique is only about a person. But when you is shown to be fake, if that is fake, what about the rest of the world? Are they all not constructs? We talk about this. We talk about these things. We're talking about Magna Carta. We're talking about this. What are the events? What are the historical events? So it raises questions about that. I think it's because Hitchcock himself may or may not have seen things. He would never talk like this. Hitchcock is not a person who would talk, who would explain his movies. Okay. I think he just thought about it as something else. But at the same, it is not that these questions are not there. Okay. Okay, I think I finished with this thing of Vertigo. I hope I've sort of been able to demonstrate that it's a complex film, that it deserves celebration in some way. It's a way more, its version of historical construction. For example, Citizen Kane, for instance, which Babu talked about last week, does not have this sense of history as constructor. Okay, it has history as memory. It doesn't have history as constructor. So it doesn't. Citizen Kane has history as remembered. It doesn't have history as constructed. Okay, so there is no doubt at all in our mind. So this version of this thing of the past, which of the it's much more complex in that sense than something like Citizen Kane, where your Citizen Kane has complexity, not that it doesn't have. I'll be happy to take any questions from you.
Sir, regarding one of the puzzles presented in the film, a lot of Judy's past is just slightly referenced, like her father and a stepfather. And even I'm not sure when Jimmy Stewart character, Scotty calls her as Gavin's mistress. I'm not sure whether to believe it. So, how much can we infer about her past?
See, one thing we can say is that the actual Madeline is Gavin Ilster's wife, right? Is there any doubt about that? Because we see her in that one particular thing. We have that scene. Okay, we have that scene where she's killed. It's shown. Her being killed is shown, right? Gavin Esther shoves her out. The Madeline as different from Judy as Madeline, right? So that there is no doubt at all. You see, look, it's not the whole story cannot be disallowed as fake, right? The entire thing is Gavin Elster wants to kill his wife. So obviously she's the money bag. For whatever reason he wants to kill her, and he builds up this entire thing of construction of the story. He builds it in order to kill his wife. So you can take this. There is no reason for him to go through this entire thing. Okay, if you doubt every single thing, what have we shown? We've shown Scotty. Scotty's Vertigo, there is no doubt, right? Scotty's Vertigo, we know that Gavin Elster was his classmate or whatever, old friend. And we know that Gavin Elster is rich, that Gavin Elster he got Scotty to follow him. He chose him because of his fear of heights. He used this entire thing to kill his wife, right? We can't doubt every single thing in the film, right? Whether Gavin Elster was a shipping magnate at all, we can't doubt everything. The film gives us certain things to doubt. It casts doubts on certain things. It doesn't. I mean, it's not that it says that everything is fake or this. It's casting doubts on certain aspects of life. In the process of casting doubts on what is shown in the movie, it also throws some doubts. It shows an entire woman created a mystique around her, created by a fiction around her, right? That fiction can, in some sense, it's not that it's completely false. It means that it's ambiguous. We don't really know. Okay, so it's basically constructs. All of them are constructs. History is a construct. It's not that it's completely fake, but there'll be a lot of fakery in history. What did you say? Yeah, he constructs. It's actually look whatever is told to Scotty by Elster and whatever is shown to him. Okay, including the Carlotta Valdez. Okay, with Judy's own improvisation. Now let's say one more thing, right? If Judy was improvising so much, how is that intelligence of the sophistication of Madeline and the crudeness of Joe? All these are things which were allowed to take in a story, right? I mean, it may not be credible in the sense that such a sophisticated Judy, I mean, Judy being so crude, so crude and fairly coarse. How did she become, how did she manage to entrance this guy by playing Madeline? Okay, these are questions you don't ask because that's all part of the fakery in movies. Yeah, please, can you?
Sir, as a addition to what you said about the constructed past or history, I found it interesting that I assume that the fake Madeline's past was a story made by Gavin, another man. So it is this mystique of Madeline was a story made by a man for another man.
Okay, but you mean, but is there
So like.
anything to say that a story like that could not be constructed by a woman?
What I was trying to say, like Scotty was, he never had any, he never saw a woman. He could only see Madeline because she was another story constructed by another man, specifically to tempt him.
Yeah, but the point the thing has been why is I mean why couldn't the story okay why couldn't Gavin and Step have been a woman? I'm not saying in the same thing. Here of course he wants to kill his wife. Obviously it has to be a man. But I'm saying why do you think this authorial thing of that story has to be a man only and not a woman?
Sir, I don't know why, but I find it fascinating that it is another man's creation that can only fascinate Scotty.
It's possible. But there is nothing to say that there's nothing in the film to talk about a woman constructing it, right? That's not problematized in the film. The fact that a woman might have constructed it differently. Okay.
The perhaps the thing counterpoint to that would be I believe Midge when Midge paints herself on Carlotta's portrait.
Yeah.
So maybe she was trying to write herself into the
But there's no
story.
story. She doesn't know about the story so much, I think. Does she know the story?
No, she was not
No.
aware. She just knows Carlotta's history and
Yeah.
she knows
Yeah.
that he is obsessed by it. And when she tries to write herself into it,
Yeah.
he's repulsed.
Yeah, he's repulsed by that. Okay, but one thing is there. Okay, you must remember this that this story. The whole point I was trying to make is the story of Madeline is not only the story of Carlotta. It includes that improvisation of Judy. I was born here. I died here, and all this. Mitch doesn't know anything about. We know about it. He knows about it, right? That entire mystique includes that narration, and that narration is not simply connected with Carlotta Valdez. It's connected to the whole of history. It's connected to the world itself, right? That Mitch doesn't know about. Mitch only sees Carlotta Valdez. She doesn't know the whole story. She knows only a little bit, right? He knows only Carlotta Valdez as a figure of mystery as somebody, and Carlotta Valdez having a but he doesn't see this the rest of it. In fact, why is that so powerful that I was born here, I died here, you took no notice of me? I think the visual thing how he builds up that entire thing, to take the entire that cross section of the tree and try to put everything there and actually to find a sort of interval in which this Carlotta Valdez might have thing and link it to at some point between the Magna Carta after in the same timeline that the Magna Carta, the Battle of Hastings, all these were in the same timeline. There was this Carlotta Valdez living here, and that Carlotta Valdez is what possessing this woman, right? So I'm not very thing about this thing of yours that it's a man's story that should be so interesting. What do you make of it in case you say that?
Perhaps what I was trying to get at is uh, Madeline is the mystique which Scotty finds in Madeline is made by Gavin. Like Gavin coached her probably. Probably
Yeah,
you
probably
have to
coach
behave
Gavin,
like.
but yeah, but I'm pretty sure that what's it called? That that complete. I mean, that you're saying that Judy didn't improvise at all.
No, sir. But it does quite contrast to
No,
see
but it doesn't
how.
doesn't matter. I don't think we should even we need to go into this stuff whether Judy improvised or not. Because but the final thing is what is delivered to what's his name Scotty. What is delivered? What is the final thing which is mystic? How it is created, right? That is important. We need not go into whether it's improvised or no, need not. But the point is what is finally delivered is this. In fact, in a thriller like this, you're allowed certain liberties. You're allowed to, Hitchcock kind of thing, far-fetched. How did it happen so much? How is there such a total fit between Gavin Elster and Gavin Elster's intent and Judy's performance? Okay, between the writing of that scenario by Gavin Elster and its performance by Judy, how could it have been delivered so perfectly in order to entrance Scotty? Now, this is not a question that we can ask really because this film is not realistic in that sense, right? Okay, it's a certain this thing allowed in thrillers. Okay, where appearance and reality there's a appearance that the entire thing about intended appearance and the actual appearance, like even in Psycho in a lot of Hitchcock stuff, that the complete fit is always there. So we need not go into that way.
I'd like to know maybe if you have some comments on the usage of color in this movie, because for one, it is very rare in Hitchcock's movies that we see a great sense of contrast between the color of objects in a frame and just how vivid this movie is compared to a lot of films that came before this and also after this in Hitchcock's filmography. And
Yeah.
also the other is that the contrast between the bleak subject matter and how vivid the film gets, because in modern films, if you see, I think maybe let's just consider David Fincher. The cinematography is very grayish and it's very representative of the how bleak the sometimes the subject matter could get in thrillers. But that I found that to be really interesting, that contrast aspect in this.
It's very rich. Like for example, you look at Hitchcock's Rear Window. Okay, I mean, it's an interesting point you've made. For example, the reds, for example, it's extremely rich. I don't know. I mean, if you look at something like Rear Window, it's also a great film. Rear Window, the coloring is very, the colors in Rear Window are very fairly. They don't have this kind of depth. The kind of mahoganies, the dresses, her golden hair, okay, her skin, okay. It's it makes it almost, I don't know how to put it, how to talk about it, but it's not the, for example, the this kind of richness is not to be found in Rear Window. Okay, it is simply not found in Rear Window because Rear Window is dealing only with a apartment block. Everything is there in the apartment block. It's almost like a play. Okay, it has the same. It doesn't have much richness in its compositions at all. This obviously I wouldn't have the vocabulary to discuss color schemes in the movie. I don't have the vocabulary to discuss how exactly what exactly are the how do they compose. But I'll say this much that the entire, for example, that extraordinary scene where she comes out to the restaurant and she's lost in a trance somewhere, the grey dress, the thing, the yellow hair, right? I mean, It's not simply a matter of contrast. It's a matter. It's very rich in some way. It's the same thing in the the air in which that redwood, the Sequoia National Park is shot. It's almost, how do you say, ghostly apparition, like an apparition, right? Obviously, he's got these. Considering that Hitchcock made a number of color movies, Frenzy, okay, he's made Family Plot, he's made Friends, he's made a number of color movies, right? Yeah, it does. It does add to the hallucinatory. He's doing that. Okay, that richness is very important. Okay, it's very very important in this film. It would have been out of place, I think, in something like Rear Window. It would have been out of place in Rear Window for the reason that Rear Window is dealing with a far more, that those layers of complexity are not there. All you're dealing with is motivation, what you can see, character subjectivity. This is basically it, right? Character subjectivity here is very important. Okay, this whole film, the fact that you're, in fact, which is the thing, the entire thing is seen through, what's his name? Through Scotty's vision, right? Field of vision, right? Everything is except that brief flashback when Judy reveals, flashback pertaining to Judy, where she reveals that she was participating in the plot. Once that happens, once that situation happens, yeah, yeah, but birds I won't go into. It's very different. But rear window is somewhat like, I mean, it has this it's a more complex thing. Okay, uh, birds also, but yeah, I don't have the vocabulary to discuss the use of color. Okay, I can only tell you that it's extremely rich. It's not like his other movies. It's much richer than the kind of other movies that he's done. That's all I can tell you. How does one describe color except to say that it's, I mean, to use terms like rich, contrast? I mean, this one, what does it really tell you about the use of color? I mean, but you could say this, even a clothing, right? She wears that, fur coat or something, right? The car, okay, the car is a what, a Rolls Royce, gray, okay. Look at the thing of gray clothes, that gray suit which she's in there, yellow hair, gray suit, the skin, okay, dark eyes, it's done, it's constructed in a certain way. It's not simply a pretty woman, right? It's not simply a Judy Barton is not, yeah.
Look, Raghavendra,
Uh,
yeah, what about, dressing up Judy as Madeline? What is your take on it?
Judy as Madeline in the, I mean, before it's revealed to be Madeline,
No, Scotty does it, right? Scotty dresses her.
dresses her up.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you mean,
Yeah, I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
it's yeah, very interesting part of the film. So I
yeah,
want to
yeah,
know.
correct. Dresses her up, but dresses her up always unsatisfactorily. Yeah, somebody has said it's like the reverse with 50s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody said that. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, make of that, except that to, I don't know. This is okay. It is to say that there is much more than simply appearances. Okay, he's not simply dressed up. Okay, there's a mystique created by so many other things as well. Okay, even when he's fully dressed up as Madeline, the chap is not convinced that this is Madeline at all. In fact, he's always looking elsewhere, right? He's looking elsewhere. He doesn't pay attention to her. He realizes it also. He realizes it. Yeah. That is my. But I don't know about that striptease thing. Opposite of striptease. I don't know what to make of that. Yeah. Yeah. Who is that? Who said that? The opposite of striptease?
Hello?
Babu?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, who's that who said that it is the opposite of striptease?
Um, I think it was Truffaut who said that.
Truffaut. Okay. Okay. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't believe that it's central. I think it's the. I just saw this as the fact that in spite of looking completely like her in every way, she is and not only she is actually Madeline. Okay, the fact that those narratives just slipped away. Okay,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
cannot come back. Can come back. It becomes complete only with those narratives. That is the way I saw it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Also, there is the suggestion of necrophilia, right?
You where which one you're talking about?
I mean, yeah. The Scotty, dresses up her as Madeline, right?
It
And
was,
there is
yeah,
suggestion of necrophilia, right? That is,
yeah, it's possible.
it's like,
But I think, what happens is, I think you're going into this, the Hitchcock's perversity.
oh yeah,
Yeah. It will go into that other territory, the fourth kind of what I told you about now, which is a
yeah,
symptomatic meaning.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
So you will say more about Hitchcock and Hitchcock being a pervert. Yeah. Than about the movie by looking at that. Yeah. That's my feeling. Because Hitchcock has generally been written about in very negative terms as a person. Yeah. So this necrophilia. Is there any other film of where the necrophilia thing is there of Hitchcock in Psycho? Yeah,
No,
that's
I
right.
mean the key. I mean plot, the narrative junctures in Psycho is, I think, like very necrophilic in a sense.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say.
At the end of Psycho.
And one more,
Yeah,
one more
and
thing I'd like to mention here is, suppose you bring in necrophilia, right? If you bring in necrophilia, how will that tie up with the rest of it? Hitchcock was supposed to have behaved quite badly on the sets and all that with women and all that, right? He is supposed to have done that. Okay. Okay. After this question, we'll wind. The point is, it tells us something about Hitchcock to be of interest to psychoanalysts. You know, I don't think that at least I, as a film buff, as a person who adores Vertigo, okay, I am not interested in that angle at all. Gaurav, you want to ask last question, please?
no, no. I just want to add. Yeah, I think he was very well versed with psychoanalysis as well. I think he was like an appreciator and a reader of Freud. So I think at the end of Psycho as well, we we get a sort of an indication of his psychopathology, like with respect
There is
to the
wait a
Oedipal
minute.
complex and so on.
No, you're getting something here. You're making one thing here. Hitchcock, I am saying, is not intending to put many of the things into his film because it clashes, or rather, it has nothing to do with the other part, right?
Okay,
What is
okay.
said about when you say Alfred Hitchcock, the dark side of genius, and you write a book like that, okay?
Okay.
You are actually saying the bugger's an asshole, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
That's what you're saying, right? You are not being complimentary to him. Okay. You
Right.
say he might have been a genius, but he was a really dirty bugger, right? This is what you're saying basically, right? Now the point is this: it may be true. I'm not saying it's not true. In fact, a lot of understanding of Hitchcock, a lot of it goes along these lines. But that may reveal a lot about Hitchcock as an individual, as a person with very kinky tastes and all that. It may go along with the stories about how he treated women in his films and all that. But I don't think it will add very much to our understanding of Vertigo. When I say understanding, I mean our appreciation of Vertigo. You get me? To be told that this is necrophilic, I'm not being prudish here, but I'm saying to be told that there is necrophilia here, would it add anything to my whatever the way I've seen the movie? I don't think so. So I'd rather not look at it at all. Okay. That finally what matters is what interests you, what aspect of the film interests you. Has it got a metaphysical, mystical explanation, something about, philosophical explanation? Okay, that interests me more. But what it says about Hitchcock as a pervert doesn't really interest me. This is what I mean. Okay? I think we'll stop
Yes.
here, right?
Yes, understood. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you,
thanks.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raghavendra.
My pleasure. Okay. Bye.